Hey guys, how you doing? Welcome to the video. Welcome to my garage. This video is episode 1 of the rear suspension build. What we're going to be doing in this video is figuring out the location of the transaxle on Wratchet here. Now before we get too involved into where we're going to locate it, I'm going to send you to some video clips of me making these rear tabs for the transaxle and me prefabbing these bars here for the back of the chassis. Alright, now you guys just saw me make the tabs. Little FYI, these are the first tabs I made. They were wrong. Then I made these tabs and they were much better, but these were still wrong. So it actually took 3 tries before I got those tabs in there, but these tabs are really good. I'm really happy with those, and they're not tacked on here so that I can still slide the transaxle forward and backwards as I'm figuring out where I want to mount it. But I have decided that that's the elevation that I want for these tabs, so they're bolted in place and that's where they'll stay for now. So what I've got going on here is I've got a tape measure strung out to the door jamb on this chassis, and what I've got here is Mauler is 71 inches right here. The original plan for Wratchet was 75 inches, which is right here. This is just signifying the axle. And I think what I've come up with is I'm going to split the difference and I'm going to set Wratchet up at 73 inches, which is right here. And then I've got a plumb bob coming down off of the output flange, and right now it's set to 75. And it doesn't take too much of a genius to figure out that I basically settled on 75 because that's as far in as I can go. But I've decided, because I don't want, much hanging out the back here, and I'm trying to simulate Mauler as much as I can, I want to take it in to 73, which means I'm going to have to cut this bar out, and I'm going to have to cut a chunk out of the fabrication stand as well. And then I'm going to slide the transaxle 2 inches forward, and then that will be it for now. I'm not going to work on the mounts for the rear here because I have not figured out how I'm going to integrate that into the engine portion of the cage, so I'm just going to keep the jack stand on there for now. But what I'm going to do now is set up the camera as I drag the transaxle out of here as much as I can, get a Sawzall in here and chop some of this out, and then I'll tack those bars in place, and then we'll see what we can do with sliding this transaxle where we want it to go. I knew that was going to be hell to cut so much. I was trying to convince myself to go with 75 inches because then I don't have to cut it. But I kind of knew 75 would just be a little bit too long, so had to get in there and do all that cutting, gouge that out of there. But either way, we got it out now, so we're good to go. I've put these pieces back in place. Remember, this is Mauler. This is the original 75. This is the 73. This is what I'm going to shoot for. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hang the plumb bob off here again, and I'm going to slide the transaxle up. It's going to go through the notch that I just cut in there a little bit, and I'm going to bring it until the plumb bob hangs up right at 73 inches. Okay, here we go. This should be the location. As you can see now, I've slid the transaxle forward. The plumb bob is on the middle axle point, which is 73 inches. I'm good with that. Right now, I'm not doing anything with the mount back here yet for the transaxle because I don't know exactly how I'm going to tie the engine cage into that yet, so I'm just going to leave that on the jack stand. Right now the transaxle is tilted back at about 6 degrees, which is fine. My tab there, I've given it a little marker just so that if I bump these around a little bit, I can easily notice that it's out of position there. It did push through where this tube was, and the bottom actually poked through a little bit where the some of the build platform was. So that's why I needed to notch all that stuff out. And then I've got the 2 angle braces in here. They're not tacked in yet. I'll tack those in probably in the near future, but while I'm still brainstorming some of this, I'm just going to leave them in there with magnets for now. There will be some infrastructure. Oh, sorry about that. There's a serious thunderstorm going on outside right now. There will be some, and of course you can see, pretty much anytime you guys see the dog right next to me, that's probably a thunderstorm going on outside. There will be some pretty serious structure coming off of here, coming straight back, and somehow it'll integrate around here, and it will have triangular cross braces coming in, triangulating all this, making this a very strong spine that comes through here, and then it'll have some supports that come up and connect to the top of the chassis and all that. And then the upper portion of that will somehow integrate to the upper link for the upper link of the H-arm suspension in the rear. But before I can design that stuff, I need to get some of these side body panels on so that I can finish up some of this tubing back here. If you do look here, this tube itself is 1.5 inches. You can see it dips down right there. It's 1.5 inches lower than the rest of the chassis. And that's the same way on Mauler here. If we go underneath Mauler, if you can see that, Mauler actually has 2-inch by 1-inch beams that come down underneath the transaxle. And then the transaxle itself, you can see I haven't made a skid plate for this yet. The transaxle itself even hangs a little bit lower than that. And that's real common for Baja bugs like this. If you look up their skirt, you'll see that the lowest portion of the whole chassis is usually the pumpkin or the differential housing portion of the transaxle. That's going to be the same way with this transaxle. I lowered it down a little bit because your rear suspension gets limited by the drive shafts on your droop. And the lower you can get the transaxle, the lower you'll be able to have your rear tires hang, although you won't gain any travel because your transaxle will be hanging down. That storm sounds pretty bad. It is. I'm getting some hail. Get a lot of hail out here in Colorado. So guys, that's it for this video. This is episode 1 of the rear suspension build, but I'm not going full steam on the rear suspension build yet, so I don't want you guys to think that the rest of the series are going to be coming right behind this one. I had to get this one out of the way. I wanted to include the transaxle location in the rear suspension, because that actually plays a big portion into the design of rear suspension. And I also needed to decide where I'm going to put this transaxle as I design other aspects of the rear portion of the chassis here. So even though I'm not really 100% ready to start doing the rear suspension yet, I needed to get the transaxle in position so that I could finish welding the rear portion of the chassis. So, oh man, damn, that's what happens when you are out in the shop in bare feet. But I wanted to get episode 1 out there to just kind of explain some of the thought process as to why I put the transaxle where I did and why I chose the wheelbase that I'm going to go with. Even though I've locked in at 73 inches on the transaxle with my lower control arms, I can favor an inch or two in either direction if I need to fine tune it. The only downside to that is when you do that, you put a little bit of extra angle on your drive shafts. So if your offset of your wheelbase doesn't match the wheelbase that your transaxle's set at, then that's less droop that you can have because your drive shafts are already eating up some angle with that offset. But either way, guys, thanks for watching the video. I hope this is helping you guys with whatever you're working on, and I hope to see you on the next one. Take care.